This second day of SATIS conference, it's very international today. We're going to be speaking both French and English. And I'm so pleased to welcome international speakers today. They came all the way from the UK and from Sweden. To my right, à ma droite, Andy Bill. Alors, Andy, je vais te proposer de te présenter. Andy parle un peu vite, mais suivez-le bien et juste après, je ferai une petite trad rapide. Andy, tell us more about yourself.
Well, thank you. Good morning. Bonjour. My name is Andy Beale, as François said. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here in France. The last time I was here, I was telling François I was being tear-gassed at the Stade de France by the local...
Donc tu t'es pris des fumigènes au Stade de France alors que toi tu étais dans le quart de production pour ta dernière visite pour la Ligue des Champions.
At the Champions League final, yeah, with the Liverpool fans, and we had to turn the air conditioning off in the OB truck because all the tear gas was being sucked into the truck. So I'm hoping this will be a more pleasant experience than last time. But great to be here. My background is I was formerly CTO, Chief Engineer for UK sports broadcaster BT Sport. We were the guardians of a £1 billion rights portfolio, including the Champions League, the Europa League, the English Premier League, and a lot of European rights, La Liga and Serie A, and international and domestic rugby. And so I really had two roles there. I was responsible for making sure we don't go off air, which is obviously the most important job. But the more exciting part of my job perhaps was in the innovation space. So we were first to market with some really interesting innovations, both in Europe and mostly worldwide. First to market in 2015 with 4K. Then we introduced Dolby Atmos immersive audio in 2017. We then came and added HDR to the Ultra HD profile in 2019. We did huge amounts of work with immersive video, so VR 360, both multi-camera, so we had multi-camera, live graphics, live commentary, totally different streams for our 360 audience, originally in 4K, and then we migrated that to 8K, and then we added tiled-based media encoding, so you could get really efficient coding and much higher resolution perspective. And then we did work around things like both public and private 5G, for both remote production and other applications, and a little dalliance with 8K television just before COVID spoilt that, and we couldn't get the cameras back from Japan. So had lots of fun along the way.
We can see that. Donc pour résumer très brièvement, Andy a une expérience très riche autour des droits de football, plus de 1 milliard, alors j'ai fait le calcul, 1,150 millions d'euros de droits annuels quand même sur du sport pour la chaîne BT Sport. Et donc vous avez en plus de proposer un service de télé 24/24, vous avez énormément innové. Et tu vas nous en parler à la conférence de 15h, donc vous regarderez, ça s'appelle 4K UHD HDR 2110, par les gens qui l'ont fait vraiment. Et toi, tu es un des seuls sur la planète, à ma connaissance, qui l'a fait aussi en HDR. You're probably one of the only channels who's been doing 4K and HDR as well. So we'll talk about this later. That's the teasing part. À 15h heure de Paris aujourd'hui. À ta droite, Bruce Deviner. Toi, tu es un anglo-australien qui parle français de par ton passé à Thomson. Et donc, je vais te proposer de te présenter, Bruce.
Oui, je m'appelle Bruce Devlin. My name is Bruce Devlin. I am a technologist. I have designed everything from antennas to chips, and I worked with François when we made standards converters. Donc j'ai fabriqué des antennes, des puces MPEG et des convertisseurs normes avec François il y a une centaine d'années lorsque les dinosaures sont dans le monde. I was head of SMPTE standards for a few years, and I am now trying to do systems that make metadata flow. Donc j'étais chef des normes chez SMPTE, SMPTE, et aussi je suis en train de faire les systèmes pour faire fluir les métadonnées dans les systèmes médias, quoi.
Donc faire fuir, ça veut dire les faire partir, tu veux les fluidifier, hein, c'est ça?
Exactement ça, oui.
Ok. Et donc juste pour que les gens qui sont peut-être pas très familiers comprennent bien, SMPTE, plus d'une centaine d'années, qui travaillent sur les normes, notamment 2110 pour faire passer de la vidéo sur nos tuyaux Ethernet. Merci Bruce. À ta droite, Heidi from Sweden. À toi Heidi.
Hello, nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me to the lovely city of Paris. I'm Adi Granberg. I'm the CTO of SVT. SVT is a public broadcaster in Sweden, national founded by license fee or tax, if you would like to do that. And Sweden have approximately 10 million inhabitants, and SVT is the biggest channel and channel house in Sweden, which is we're really proud about when it comes to public service in Europe, and would like to have that place and continue to have that place. Myself have been 30 years in the television industry, started early 90s to start a new youth channel as a sound engineer, and I've been vision mixer. I've done all positions inside the traditional TV broadcasting. Ended up as a CTO a few years ago. And interesting in this upcoming discussion that the CTO role of SVT includes IT, distribution and production under the same umbrella, and I think that's a really important key for the future.
Merci Heidi. Donc pour résumer, tu as commencé il y a 30 ans à la télé publique suédoise SVT comme ingénieur du son. 30 ans plus tard, tu es directeur technique et tu nous disais tout à l'heure en intro que vous avez la plus grosse plateforme de streaming après YouTube en Suède. Donc on aura le temps d'en parler puisque c'est le sujet d'aujourd'hui qui est est-ce qu'il y a toujours de l'avenir dans les chaînes de télé et radio en mode broadcast, c'est-à-dire je pousse ça sur des émetteurs, etc. Donc merci. On va passer la parole à Andy. Andy, I'll switch to English, then I'll do a quick translation in French, then you talk. Please, Andy, what do you think is the challenge now for broadcasters when you see so many streaming platforms and you see the offer is so rich? I mean, what's the challenge now? C'est quoi le défi aujourd'hui quand on voit une offre aussi riche en termes de streaming, de plateformes de streaming qui font que les broadcasters, les diffuseurs sont un peu pris à la gorge?
I think it's a really interesting landscape, right? And I think there are challenges, but I think there are also opportunities. And I think we need to remember that wherever there's challenge and change, there's also a huge opportunity. And if we embrace that, we can find some new ways through. But right now, the landscape is, and I think Ali alluded to it with his really broad role. And when I talk about skills, I wear a different hat where I run a charity looking after skills, bringing people into industry. This challenge about there's so many different disciplines required in technology and engineering now across the broadcast space. It is so vast and it's still changing and growing. It's a big problem. But if you step back a second and look at the market,
I'll do a quick translation. Donc ce que tu nous dis, c'est que pour toi il y a vraiment un enjeu RH puisqu'il y a beaucoup de disciplines, beaucoup de cœurs de métier, et tu faisais référence à ce que nous a dit Heidi en Suède. Tu t'occupes d'une association qui s'appelle RISE, R-I-S-E en bon français. Et je t'en prie.
So I think the challenge is interesting, right? We've, in the last 10, 15 years, broadcasters who've traditionally occupied a space where they've been there probably because of provenance, they've had, much like your model, they've been given priority through legislation and through public funding and some through support, but advertiser funding. We've seen third parties like Google very successfully eat our lunch and enter the media value chain. And what I mean by that is taking a lot of the advertising revenue away from traditional markets like television. At the same time, they've built an absolute best-in-class TV platform. You know, there is no better platform in the world, with a great amount of respect to every broadcast CTO, than YouTube. It is completely scalable, supports live and non-live, supports every resolution you could possibly want, frame rate, high frame rate as well now, by I mean 60 frames a second, and available in every single market, right? And really cleverly, have remained completely inside the value chain, so there's still a monetization engine. And
donc attends. Donc ce que tu es en train de nous faire, c'est la pub de Google. Tu es en train de nous dire que c'est la meilleure plateforme qui soit, elle est scalable, ils ont pris plein de revenus publicitaires, ok? Est-ce qu'on se jette par la fenêtre tout de suite? Should we jump out of the window right now, or is there a future?
No, I think it's okay. But also, the last point I want to make about YouTube, I described it as slopey shoulders, because what's really interesting is if Ali buys a piece of content or commissions a piece of content to show, and the content doesn't resonate with audiences or is disappointing, then SVT will be responsible. They'll hold that credibility. YouTube have no affiliation with the content. It could be crap. It could be brilliant, or it could be absolutely rubbish. But no one's pointing the finger at YouTube going, well, it's your fault the content's rubbish. They have no affiliation with the quality. So they have the perfect world. However, what we have is a really interesting space, because broadcasters are credible, and we live in a world of change. If you look at the world in the US this last week, right, seismic transformational change is coming at high geopolitical level, and people want credible company for all their uses of source, for sport coverage, for entertainment. You know, broadcasters play a really important role. We keep the nation entertained. we care for people, because old people will watch TV for company. You know, broadcasters have a really, really important function, and we should never ever forget the really, really vitally important role in society of a television broadcaster that's respected.
Donc avant de passer la parole à Heidi, ce que tu nous disais en quelques phrases, tu nous disais que ce qui était intéressant avec YouTube, c'est que tu as la plateforme d'un côté qui n'est pas responsable de la qualité du contenu, alors qu'un broadcaster, un diffuseur, une chaîne télé-radio est responsable du contenu et du contenu éditorial. Et tu faisais une référence à ce qui se passe en termes de géopolitique, notamment aux États-Unis récemment, où on voit l'importance d'avoir du contenu de qualité vérifié, etc., etc. Please, Heidi.
Yeah, because I have one more perspective out of it. And we quite often forget that the reason to be for a broadcaster have been the limitation of frequencies in the air. So you can only have one broadcaster, and that broadcaster from the beginning could decide what everybody should watch. Since the internet, iPhone, YouTube, the audience now would like to do what they would like to see. We missed that important part because we still building equipment and thinking that it's really difficult to do TV, while the audience can do TV easier with a smartphone with more audience than I can do inside my TV house. That's a biggest threat we have, and we need to accept it as an industry, as a broadcaster, to adopt that to the audience. So with easily language say, we need to stop thinking about video editors, sound editors, gradings, graphics, and talk about media creators and make tools for media creations and get standards that are not isolated in that kind of mindset. So we need to work on a different level and really not jump out the window, but adapt to what the audience would like to see and how they would like to create content, and how easy it is today to make good content without production broadcast standards.
Donc pour résumer en deux mots, tu parles de quelque part deux contrastes. Il y a un contraste technique qui est que dans le monde du broadcast, on a besoin toujours de beaucoup de ressources pour construire des studios, des régies, etc. Alors que beaucoup de gens produisent avec des moyens tout à fait satisfaisant. Il n'y a qu'à voir ici cette installation multicaméra, et on est en live sur le site du SATIS, et merci de nous suivre à nouveau. Et tu parles également d'un point de vue ressources humaines, l'organisation même en silo des métiers, en disant bah ouais, toi tu es ingénieur du son, toi tu es télérégleur, comme on dit dans une grande chaîne de télé parisienne pour les personnes qui manipulent les caméras PTZ. Ok, compris. Donc ce que tu veux dire, c'est décloisonner tout ça. En venant, je me faisais la réflexion en parlant de Bruce Devling. Toi, tu es un des inventeurs du MXF. Ok. Je me disais, le MXF, tu as dû commencer ton travail en 98-99. Le MXF, il a mis peut-être 20 ans avant de devenir solide, dans le sens anglais du terme, hein. C'est-à-dire que on soit sûr de la qualité de ce qui se passe et de l'interopérabilité. Je suis persuadé qu'on ne pourrait pas se le permettre aujourd'hui. On n'a plus assez de gras dans les chaînes de télé pour mettre ça en place.
I'm going to respond in English so my friends can hear me. So the interesting thing about MXF is it was never really meant to be an end in itself. It was a transition to moving files around the way that we moved live around back in the time when MXF came about. And one of the slides that I give when I talk about the future talks about 800 years ago, the technology limit of mass media was people writing by hand. And then 200 years ago, the limit was how fast we could print things. And then 100 years ago, it was how fast we could do photography. And then 80 years ago, it was how much spectrum there was to do radio. And then, if you keep following the trend, you go through analog broadcasting, digital broadcasting, using digital chips, then using operating systems, and then suddenly we're in the cloud. And what's really interesting, if you take each one of those technology disruptors, and you look at the distance between the previous disruptor and the next one, and you draw a graph, it's a straight line that hits the ground about now. which basically means when somebody asks me, you know, what's the next disruptor going to be? And I'll say, well, there's probably 10 disruptors going on now because there are literally no barriers to creating a disruptive technology anymore. If you've got a credit card, and preferably some money behind it, and an AWS account, you can disrupt things. YouTube disrupted things because they had a bigger credit card and they just did it before everybody else was able. So up until very recently, technology drove the mass media space. That's ended. That ended this year, probably ended yesterday. They'll look back in history and say, yesterday was the end of technology driving media. It's now business models and generating content, good content or bad content, that's going to change the world. And MXF is just a bucket that moves stuff around the place. But it's my bucket.
Ok. Donc je vais avoir beaucoup de difficultés à résumer, mais ce que tu nous dis en gros, c'est qu'il y a une accélération des transformations et que aujourd'hui c'est très facile de transformer grâce au cloud. Alors je suis assez surpris parce qu'il est quand même, ça fait à peu près 15 minutes, je demande à l'équipe de production qu'on est live sur la chaîne YouTube. On n'a pas encore parlé d'intelligence artificielle. Je me dis, il se passe quelque chose, messieurs. Mais t'en as un petit peu parlé parce que t'as dit cloud, donc l'IA est pas très loin. AD, you want to add something? Go for
yeah,
it,
because I cannot more agree with what you are saying, and I think the development like it is right now will not come from the broadcast production industry. It will come from another thing. And I had because I'm public service, there are other editing vendors as well. But if you compare Avid with Adobe's 95% of the customer are my users, my end users. 95% of customer of Avid is my employees. So who should I work with? It's really difficult. The industry for Avid, they need to rethink towards Adobe, then it's other brands as well. But the mindset is like that. And inside SVT today, I have department figuring out how to work with Avid. And I need to rechange that mindset to say, how could I create an organization working with video editing, grading, and sound editing in the same tool and be a media creator with some kind of software instead of focus what kind of software that are branded for the production industry. And one big, fantastic, disrupting example is what everybody talks about inside, at least I think Europe right now, is content credentials. And I think content credential is a fantastic way to see where the money comes from, who did it, and what happened with it. But SVT as a company have been working 70 years to put out content to the audience that had been truth. I don't need a content credential again to make that happen. That's my job and have always been. I think content credential is for Adobe's customer, which is my audience, to put out content on YouTube and get what I had for the last 70 years already, the trust in the audience. So that's another disruptive thing happening in the industry right now, that everybody's trying to chase and see how could I adopt a content credential when I already have the SVT logo that actually is a content credential for my brand inside my country, which now is adopting to the audience as well. So it's few things going on all over disrupting the industry right now that we really need to back off and look at as really sober persons to say what is actually the movement going on.
It's also legislation.
Hold on. Before you take over, I just need to do a bit of French. Donc, juste Heidi, c'est très compliqué de résumer parce que vos propos sont riches, messieurs. Mais Heidi, ce que tu nous dis, c'est deux choses. C'est que toi, le logo de ton entreprise, encore une fois, c'est le France Télévisions et le Radio France suédois. Votre logo, il veut dire quelque chose, il veut dire de la qualité, etc. Et pour toi, c'est cette notion de credentials, donc de droit, elle est très importante aujourd'hui et c'est un gros sujet. Et juste avant, tu nous parlais du contraste en disant qu'on a deux éditeurs de systèmes de montage. D'un côté, un Avid et le gros de ses clients, ce sont les chaînes de télé finalement qui salarient les monteurs. Et de l'autre, Adobe qui s'adresse directement au public et qui fait le gros de son chiffre là-dessus. Andy, please.
I was going to add, what's interesting is, to Bruce's point, in this highly contended now space where the rate of change is so rapid and so fast, and the space that innovators are disrupting rapidly, most of those innovators, there's 2 points I want to make. One is that most of the people who are doing the true innovation are not thinking about, the greatest aspect, are not really thinking about standards. They're just doing stuff. They're just logging into platforms, spinning stuff up, creating code, creating whatever it is, doing things without thinking, oh, I need to download 3 documents and cross-check they work. The modern mindset, the modern disruptor, is not particularly bound by our old-fashioned ways of working because of this disruption that's already been. The other problem we had a perfect storm in the last 5 years, where partly accelerated by COVID, really enabling at-home creators to suddenly grab tools, brilliant software-defined tools like products like OBS and vMix. They can spin up at home, grab a microphone from Amazon, which is available the next day, plug it in, get a camera, make live content, exactly to your point, really simply, totally democratizing access to both non-live and live content. But the thing that didn't catch up, and this is what's held back, I don't know what it's like in Sweden, but certainly in the UK, what really has not caught up and is still not catching up is legislation, because the broadcasters in the UK are bound by very, very strict rules from the regulator about time slots they can broadcast content for good reasons, to protect young people and children from unsafe content, and to make sure that the right spread of content is made, and to make sure that ad revenue is there and is not anti-competitive. But while the government have been very carefully legislating to protect very old-fashioned competition rules, all these other disruptors have just stormed in the DTC space, totally unregulated, and as I say, have taken now massive market share. And what we really need is a much smarter, much faster, agile legal framework to understand the value, to your point about trust, the point I was trying to make earlier about the important role that broadcasters play, to really empower us to get on with making brilliant content and serving customers, not worrying about technology. We shouldn't be lying awake thinking, I've got to make my own DTC platform and I've got to support it and I've got to have encryption and we should have tools now in this modern world which we can share, which are just a commodity really. And what we should be doing as broadcasters is worrying about making brilliant content that really serves the need of the audience in line with the public service requirement. And beyond.
Donc un petit résumé avant de te passer la parole, Heidi. Donc ce que tu nous dis, c'est que les diffuseurs ne combattent pas à armes égales. On a d'un côté des youtubeurs par exemple qui peuvent s'équiper du jour au lendemain et produire de l'excellent contenu, mais qui ne sont pas soumis aux régulations, les lois antitrust laws en français, je vais pas y arriver, des monopoles, les lois pour qu'il n'y ait pas de monopole, et que donc à partir du moment où les diffuseurs dont la mission principale c'est de faire du bon contenu seront capables de combattre à armes égales, ce sera beaucoup plus facile. Heidi.
Yeah, I can agree as well with that, because I think all that things that held SVT back is legacy things as well, because internet is not a time. My kids at home, I get 5 teenagers, they don't give it. If I'm doing some transmission of SVT of some kind of content after 9, because they get internet, and internet doesn't care, and what they are surfing on 4 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock, it doesn't. So the legalization they need to adopt to it as well. But what we need to adopt to is in industries. If I'm taking up my telephone here, I think I don't know the number, but over 50% of the content done in the world is made with a smartphone. I think it's much more. I don't know it, so I shouldn't sit here and say how much, but it's more. And this is not an 8K or 4K production standard phone. If you're gonna film 8K in broadcast production standards, it will explode and nobody will notice in the other end. So we need to adapt to that and really understand that. I think the broadcast production industry as it looks today, it is dead. And we need to accept that and find the best path for everybody to survive in that new roles. And I think me as a broadcaster, if I go to that part, I should stop buying boxes. I need to have an infrastructure in a data center, my own or someone else, it doesn't matter, where I can spin up softwares that software industry are developing for me, and I get the UX, and that's, I think, is the biggest challenge. And I need to start that journey, and I hope I can start that journey together with the old broadcast vendors, but I'm not sure that I can do that.
Donc ce que tu nous dis, c'est que la consommation, elle a tout à fait évolué. La captation, elle a vraiment évolué. Tu nous montrais ton smartphone et tu faisais référence aux 5 ados que tu as à la maison. 5 ados que tu as à la maison, je vais parler correctement. Et donc, merci de t'être déplacé et d'avoir pris de ton temps, parce que tu en plus du boulot, tu vas être pas mal occupé. Et tu nous disais que tu ne veux plus acheter de boîte broadcast chez les fournisseurs. On a beaucoup de respect pour eux puisqu'ils donnent de l'argent aux SATIS qui nous permettent de faire des conférences gratuites. Et on les salue, mais ce que tu nous dis, c'est que ce que tu attends de ces fournisseurs, c'est qu'ils te fournissent de l'infrastructure et ensuite des solutions qui vont venir se greffer dessus. Merci. Bruce, do you share the same opinion that
yes.
We shouldn't... That's great. We can all go home. On rentre tous à la maison. Bon app, messieurs. Dames. No, Bruce, my question to you was more, okay, infrastructure is IT stuff. Do I still need to go and see those guys downstairs? Ce que je veux dire, c'est que je suis un petit, voilà, j'envoie des petits pics. Hein. Notre ami Heidi nous a dit, moi, ce que je veux, c'est l'infrastructure. Après, je mets des outils dessus. Les outils, je peux aller les chercher en ligne. Est-ce qu'il faut vraiment encore que je m'embête avec cette industrie? Je vais prendre des outils du monde de l'informatique, classique, du réseau, du truc, du machin, du cloud. On y va.
Content is everything, and great content always wins. It doesn't always make as much money as we'd like. So the blockbuster movie, I think there will always be a role for the blockbuster movie. I think there will always be a role for very high production value series, episodics, and there'll be a role for high production value sports and events. And you can't do that with iPhones. So do we need to see the people downstairs? Yes, because you still need to build the special tools for the special cases. If two people are talking to each other like a video podcast, do we need the people downstairs? Probably not.
Ok, donc gros, ce que tu nous dis, c'est que de toute façon, le contenu de qualité va toujours gagner, qu'on ne peut pas faire des productions avec un smartphone. Alors on a eu Claude Chabrol qui est venu au SATIS, tu sais, le réalisateur de la Nouvelle Vague, qui est venu dire, bah, vous savez quoi, mon prochain film, il sera fait avec un smartphone. Mais quand tu vois l'équipement que tu dois mettre autour de ton smartphone pour faire des images de Claude Chabrol, tu peux te dire, bon ok, très bien, t'as pas mis un capteur Harry ou un capteur Blackmagic, tu as mis un capteur smartphone, mais derrière tout l'accastillage et toute l'équipe, c'était du Claude Chabrol.
C'est vrai que Star Wars épisode 1 a l'air d'avoir été fait avec un smartphone, mais ils m'ont dit que c'était vraiment un Sony camera qu'ils ont utilisé.
Ouh. Heidi, je t'en prie.
I agree and I disagree. I still think we need to have. I still think we need this kind of convention. Somewhere we need to meet. Somebody need to do the software. Somebody need to understand the needs. So we just need to change the way we are thinking all over the industry. Then I disagree with the other thing, because I still think that we need to do quality content, but the audience need to decide what the quality content is, not some Japanese companies selling 8K cameras and then selling 8K screens, which is not the same 8K. It's two different worlds. So as long as I don't can distribute 8K to compressed to the screen, it's no need. We need to adopt even that to a new industry. That's my first point. My second point is that, of course, but we can do Formula One with iPhones, but the lenses need to be there. We need to rethink the way we are building Formula One cars. And I'm looking at the car industry and just realized when I grow up, it maybe was 10 car brands in Sweden because it was really difficult to build a car. Then someone said, okay, we remove the gas engine and put in an electrical engine. Is it difficult to build a car or is it difficult to build the engine? That's what happened with the industry. We are building a car, now we're changing the engine. So less people need to think about the engine. Everybody inside this industry is thinking about the engine. Now, I think the last figure I heard, it's 100 different car brands in China. 100 different car brands in China this year. So it's not difficult to build a car, and it's not difficult to build TV production. And some kind of examples, of course, we need a Formula One car sometimes. We probably would like to have that, but it's not for the audience to drive.
Ok, donc un petit résumé. Ce que tu nous dis, c'est qu'il faut qu'un écosystème complet fonctionne. Donc je ne peux pas acheter une caméra qui fasse du 8K qui ne soit pas compatible avec une autre marque d'écran 8K. Tu nous dis aussi, et on en parlait juste avant avec Claude Chabrol, qu'il fera toujours de super optiques et de super équipements pour faire du bon contenu. Et tu nous dis aussi qu'on se focalise trop sur le moteur de la voiture et pas assez sur la voiture, en nous disant qu'il y a un nombre de marques incroyables de voitures électriques et que le sujet, c'est plus le moteur, le sujet, c'est la voiture.
It's actually a really good analogy that I never thought of. I'm going to steal that because I was at a motor show in the UK called Goodwood Festival of Speed, and all the big brands had very large marquees showing off and to your point, there are multiple Chinese vendors. And what I noticed is really interesting, and I wish I'd thought of that analogy, is that take one brand, Polestar. But their whole sales pitch is not the 4 different models available right now. It's the fact that there's a common platform. They've built one single platform, which sat proudly in the middle of the booth, with 4, to your point, it's got a huge battery pack in the middle, 4 wheels, a drive system, and every other, whatever you buy, whether it's a Roadster, whether it's an SUV, doesn't matter what the car is, it's built on this platform. And this is actually what we should be talking about, is the migration to software-defined production and tools. You know, our modern world is either on-prem or off-prem software, you know, storage and processing, whether it's GPU, CPU, bit of FPGA maybe in there, but fundamentally it's a platform. And what we need to do is take the best tools. And what's actually interesting is the innovation is happening in the consumer space, because we joked outside about being able to, on the iPhone 15, remove the drilling noise of our little video, which is available now, free. You know, image stabilization is available now. We spend, to your point, lots and lots of money on Steadicams and hardware solutions, when actually in the domestic space, it's available on software now, free. So what we need to do is be much more smart with how we spend money, become a little less snobby about traditional ways of working, and apply those tools onto a common platform that we can support sustainably, migrate our tool set, so we're all now software engineers and trying to get rid of this legacy piece, and build really good infrastructure systems in software with the right security wrap, of course, on a common platform which is very manageable, where we can get a much broader skill set to support and deploy then whatever content we want on top of it. And that's, I think, where we need to head.
Donc ce que tu nous dis, Andy, c'est que pour toi, l'important, c'est en tant que professionnel, s'appuyer sur des bonnes plateformes sur lesquelles on peut aller intégrer, utiliser des outils. C'est à la demande. On a besoin d'un outil. Tu nous faisais référence à une petite anecdote devant le bâtiment où on a fait une vidéo un peu de lancement de cette conférence, où on avait un bruit de perceuse et tu lui disais, bah tiens, si tu avais le bon modèle de smartphone, tu pourrais l'enlever directement. Ça, c'est dans le logiciel. Bruce, j'ai vu que tu as levé ton micro. Tu veux nous dire quelque chose?
Yeah, I was just going to add a little something there, which is, in the software world, we're used to billions of people using a single app and it just working. So let's try the audience. Est-ce qu'il y a des personnes ici qui utilisent Gmail ou Outlook? Yeah, okay. So we're used to people having billions of uses of a single app in the cloud. Well, the technology that powers that, we don't really use very much in the broadcast industry, but it's free. You can download it and make it work. And one of the interesting demos that I saw, which is probably ready for prime time, was taking that same time-slicing, multi-processing technology and using it in a massively powerful GPU platform and doing real-time time-slicing of multi-vendor apps. So what used to be in a data center now goes into something about the size of this table that you can take on-site and do 4K live production with basically anybody's software down there. You can buy that today. Okay, it won't work today, but you can buy it today, and hopefully that sort of stuff will be commonplace next year, because that's the speed at which the underlying hardware is working. So if you can imagine it, and you've got a credit card, or preferably somebody else's credit card, you can build it.
Donc, Heidi propose sa carte de crédit. Il est, je note, messieurs, dames. Ok, ça fait 32 minutes qu'on est live. Heidi, avant que je te passe la parole, Bruce, ce que tu nous faisais remarquer, c'est que dans le monde du grand public ou dans le monde de l'informatique classique, on utilise tous le mail et parfois on est des milliards à utiliser la même appli. Et ce que tu nous faisais remarquer, c'est que finalement, il y a plus de limite à ce qu'on peut construire dans le monde de la vie des professionnels. Alors on va prendre le commentaire d'Heidi et après on va vous passer la parole. On a un magnifique micro sans fil et il fera parler bien dans le micro en annonçant votre titre et votre nom, s'il vous plaît, pour que derrière sur le replay on puisse vous entendre. Heidi, over to you.
We cannot have a conference without talking about AI as well. I need to just say a few words about that because I will kill it, I guess. I think AI as well is the biggest threat for our industry that ever come up, because what AI will do is what I'm trying to do for the last 70 years ago. I would like to create stories, I would like to make animations, and I would like to make life fantastic for everybody, and I bought so much heavy equipment to do that. Now AI makes everybody to do what I have done for the last 70 years, cheaper, easier and faster than I ever can do. So we need to adapt to that as well inside our industry and really rethink that content is king, and AI will help everybody to do what I used to do just 10 years ago really difficult. So I think AI is here to stay, and we should really put that in on every place we can do that, because that will help us in one way. I love to say that when I'm on as a CTO, but as a private person, this really scares me. This really scares me, on the other hand, I should say, with 5 teenagers at home. But I think AI is really disrupting the industry, and that's just started for us to understand, while the audience use it without notice it.
Ok, donc tu parles du contraste. D'un côté, l'IA qui te paraît très très intéressante pour combattre encore une fois à armes égales et que toi tu puisses faire avancer les affaires et le contenu produit par la SVT, la chaîne publique suédoise, et tu nous dis que toi d'un point de vue personnel tu as quand même un petit peu peur de l'IA. Ce que je voudrais vous proposer, c'est de prendre une question dans le public. Est-ce que quelqu'un a une question, un commentaire ou une info à nous faire passer? Une carte de crédit? Non, pas de carte de crédit. Il n'y a pas de carte de crédit ils l'ont tous laissé à la maison. Parce que Bruce serait très intéressé pour mettre en place de nouveaux tests. Messieurs, dames, une question? Oui, je t'en prie. Alors, il faut que tu débugues le micro, parce que je n'ai pas les compétences de débugage de micro.
No. Yes. No. It's working now. Ok. Français ou anglais?
Français.
Ok. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Laurent Derbré, workflow consultant et formateur. En vous écoutant parler, je me dis que maintenant, tout le monde devient créateur. Et certains disent, il y a beaucoup de contenu de qualité, énormément de qualité. Certains disent, pas trop quand même, vu le nombre de gens qui publient tout et un peu n'importe quoi. Ça veut dire que si on laisse tout le monde se dire créateur, est-ce qu'on a encore besoin finalement d'aller à l'école pour apprendre les règles de nos métiers, le son, l'image? Est-ce qu'on a besoin finalement de toutes ces écoles? Puisque si tout le monde sait mieux que tout le monde et qu'on n'a plus besoin de respecter des règles, moralité, c'est un peu comme en cuisine, on va tout mettre et on va faire des plats et puis on va dire que c'est très bon et qu'il y aura des gens qui vont liker et on va stocker ça sur des data centers qui vont consommer, et on parle d'écologie. Donc avant, quand il n'y avait que des broadcasters, il y avait des flux. Maintenant, on stocke tout et n'importe quoi. Je vais chez McDo, je stocke, je suis créateur, j'ai fait une super photo avec une fraise. Voilà, donc la question.
Merci Laurent. So the question is, because everyone can create, there's a big planet-saving issue, let's say. B, if we say we no longer need to stick with standards because it's slowing us down. Everyone then is a creator. So what's the point? I don't know if it makes sense.
I don't know if I can try to get my ideas around it, because I think we need standards and we need regulation and we need to have a better discussion about environment, if that was included as well in the question. But I don't think we are the most environmental friendly industry at all, because we buying so much hardware. And going back again now to standards of broadcasting contra distribution, my strategic line inside SVT is 100% focus on the audience and what they saying is quality and what they need, what kind of quality they need, that need to be the source of production. Now we are, because of the legacy, because of the history, because of the really difficult and really much power needed to do television, we are still doing high-end production for everything and squeeze it down a small straw. That's not environmental friendly or ecosystem. So we really need to adopt what are the users' expectation of Formula One, of football, of news, or whatever, and draw the line from distribution into production and kill the lines between production and distribution and accept that we are in a distribution production industry because of we're using the common platforms, the same platforms. So we need to have a distribution standard in production, not the other way around, or not two different things. And I think that Bruce can probably do during the first quarter next year.
Ok, donc Donc pour résumer brièvement, ce que tu nous dis, c'est qu'on a besoin de normes, on a besoin de règles. Mais ce que tu nous dis, c'est qu'il y a un contraste trop important entre des productions qui sont très très haut niveau d'un côté et la distribution qui a pas forcément les mêmes normes et pas forcément les mêmes besoins, et que ça génère beaucoup de déchets quelque part. Bruce.
I think many of the standards we already have come from different places. Some of them were limitations of old technology, and we put in place those standards to make certain either traditional broadcasting was financially viable or didn't, to use the English expression, blow shit up in the middle of a broadcast, because there were traditionally very high voltages and lots of danger in the kit that we used to build. Nowadays, the only way you're going to kill yourself with an iPhone is if you throw it at yourself very hard. Some of us want to do that to some of the people that we have to talk to. So the rules that we need are different today. It's not that all the old rules are bad rules, but some of the rules are no longer relevant. But we don't have a way of forgetting the bad rules, unfortunately, because of the way standards work. If we look at, say, the software industry, which is more mature in this respect, they standardize things like the results of good cybersecurity processes. They don't specify how you do those processes, but they tell you the results you have to achieve. In other words, protect data, make certain systems are difficult to hack. And the way you do it is left completely to the market to go and implement it. It doesn't matter what language you use, whether you code in, I don't know, Arabic, because there are Arabic programming languages, that's just fine. You can do that. But what you've got to do is hit the same results. And I think we need to rethink the way that we do legislation and rethink the way that we standardize our industry based on outcomes, not on processes.
Donc Bruce, tu reviens sur l'idée d'Andy tout à l'heure de la voiture, qu'on se focalise encore trop sur le moteur et qu'on doit travailler sur des législations différentes pour pouvoir travailler différemment. Ce que je vais vous proposer, messieurs, dames, c'est de prendre une autre question. Le temps tourne un petit peu. On arrive à la fin de cette session. Est-ce qu'il y a une autre question dans la salle? Et merci encore à vous de vous être déplacés.
Quelque chose de difficile. Allez-y.
Non, il n'y a que des questions simples. Donc, je vous propose qu'on conclue, messieurs. Je vais vous proposer un dernier tour de table. Comment est-ce que vous voyez l'avenir? Encore une fois, le titre de notre conf, c'était les chaînes de télé, les stations de radio. Est-ce qu'elles ont un avenir à travers l'innovation, ou est-ce qu'on a une extinction prochaine? Et donc, je voudrais vous demander comment vous voyez le futur. How do you see the future, Andy? Andy Bill.
The future
is for broadcasters. And extension, innovation. How do you see the future?
I think we need to be a little bit less old-fashioned. To your point, right? We need to stop being so prudish, and we're very, very smug and hard to change as an industry. Traditionally, we still believe that the old way we did things was the best way, and that's why we've missed the last 5 years. So what we need to do is wake up quickly and take on board the observations we have here, and actually look forward and adopt the right technologies and invest in building the base platforms, which are going to be the foundation, which we have to get right to build the right technology on to enable the right stories to be told in the future. I think it's really bright, but only if we become a little bit less smug about our position as these very sort of pretentious old-fashioned ways of working, we being really important. And in fact, accept that there's a whole content creator community that's worth billions of pounds making incredible content that people would love to watch for very little money, and we need to now embrace that, get the tools that are available every day in everyday domestic products into our broadcast platform, which is robust, so we can spend money on the stuff that matters, not the stuff that doesn't. We waste far too much money with the overheads for old-fashioned ways of working that we need to get rid of and concentrate on the new, getting great content to air quickly.
Donc ce que tu nous dis, Andy, c'est que le futur, c'est avoir une bonne infrastructure, arrêter de gaspiller des sous là où il ne faut pas, s'appuyer sur les bons créateurs de contenu qui sont peut-être aujourd'hui sur YouTube et les faire revenir chez les broadcasters. Merci, Andy. Bruce.
Software-defined everything will be the new technology. Great sensors at one end, great displays and transducers at the other end, but all the middle bit will be software. So we need a bit more cooperation between people in writing software that works between companies. But in terms of what do we show on that technology, in Europe, we're privileged the national broadcasters want to preserve a bit of the national identity. Unfortunately, the biggest market in the world, America, cares more about the money than preserving the national cultural identity. That is a problem. And what I'd like to see happen in the future, I don't know whether it will happen, is that nation states who want to value their cultural identity invest in those outcomes for their countries rather than concentrating on quarterly profits of the producers that live in those countries.
Ok, donc ce que tu nous dis, c'est que les diffuseurs publics ont toujours un grand rôle à jouer et que eux aussi doivent investir là où ça génère le plus de bénéfices, le plus d'intérêt, le plus de valeur pour les spectateurs.
Même les diffuseurs privés, parce que le rôle n'est pas seulement pour les diffuseurs publics, c'est pour les gens privés, plus les TikTokers, plus les YouTubers. Et si une société française veut une identité nationale faite dans les médias, il y a des rôles pour le gouvernement pour accélérer ça.
Ok. Merci Bruce. Heidi, same question over to you. How do you see the future?
After you two, it's really difficult to say something else, and I totally agree. I think we need to do a culture change. I think that's the most important thing, and I can just send out to everybody that try to keep up the value strings and making money in the old industry as a vendor. They need to rethink, how can I make money in the new industry? What's the new car? What's the new engine? And help us to do that, because you will die otherwise. I'm 100% sure. Then if it's like 1 year or 5 years, doesn't matter, because it will not be any buyer there. And we as a buyer need to help the industry to move into the new industry, do that together, included the crew working on SVT. That culture is still that I'm a cameraman. And the camera is so difficult, so you need to be a cameraman to understand what all the things on the camera is. That's not the way anymore. You take you just push on the
At least for
screen.
television.
Yeah.
At least for television.
Yeah, for television. So we need to adapt to that, accept it, and focus on and be proud of our content, and really do the best what we can do to really do content. Because we as a buyer, we have the resources. The broadcast houses, we have resources. Just make it better for the audience and accept that, and help the industry to accept that. So for me, it's culture, because the technology is here. And it will change with the upcoming 6 months to something we don't really understand what it can do, and it will not be driven from the industry. So change the culture, do it quick, help us survive together in a new world, and adopt to that.
Donc tu nous dis qu'il faut vraiment faire évoluer la culture chez les diffuseurs, chez les producteurs de contenu et les éditeurs de contenu, et tu nous dis qu'il faut le faire rapidement si on veut pas qu'il y ait une extinction de cette manne de diffuseurs européens. Moi, je voudrais vous proposer une dernière petite question, parce qu'il y a quand même quelque chose qui m'a fait réagir, Bruce, et je le dis parce que je travaille sur un gros projet français sur lequel on aimerait qu'on ait cette super infrastructure et tout mettre en logiciel. Sauf qu'on est allé voir ce que font les copains. Et il y a des copains qui ont mis du logiciel partout, et on a une explosion de la consommation. C'est-à-dire qu'entre l'ancien monde et le nouveau, on est à plus 20% de place dans des salles techniques, plus 20% de consommation électrique. Et là, tu dis, les mecs, vous allez arrêter de m'épipoter, parce qu'en fait, ça va pas du tout dans le sens de l'histoire. So I'll switch to English real quick. I was making reference to the fact that if it's all software-based, what we see on recent projects here in Europe is that it's an explosion of power consumption. And it takes more space in technical rooms. Guys, do we have an answer for this?
I think, again, we need to... Unfortunately, the old way we did TV was quite effective in that when we decided what to see when. Now when the audience would like to desire what to see when, and we have loads of content, of course that will be power consumption. So we need to help ourselves to make better standards that are lower bit rate, and we don't need maybe to produce in the higher bit rate, so we need less data center. We need to share resources. Look at the OTT industry. How much capacity do each country have to do the OTT player in data? And we have YouTube, which actually is one of the best platforms that are worldwide. We need to cooperate on that level and say content is king. It's not about the platform. Of course, we need to have secure platform where the audience feel that this is good content or safe content or whatever regulation we need to have on the platforms. But we need to share resources more. And I think that's a legacy thing as well, because in the past we said that Channel 4 can afford 10 edit suites and SVT can afford 100 edit suites. We can do more contents and employ more journalists. That's not the case anymore. Everybody can do edit whatever again and film. So again, we need to focus on the content, share more platforms and work together to keep the bitrate down, the processing down, not getting it up on higher resolution in production and lower resolution in distribution. So align.
Donc encore une fois, tu reviens sur cette question d'aligner les différents univers en disant que si on consomme plus, c'est qu'en fait on voit trop grand, trop haut, trop lourd et qu'il faut qu'on soit plus raisonnable et qu'encore une fois on se focalise sur le contenu. Ok, Bruce, tu veux rajouter peut-être le mot de la fin?
The Green Software Foundation has launched some software that allows you to measure how your systems are consuming electricity and power. One of the things that they have put into their software is where are you consuming that power? What was generating the power that you were consuming at the time you consumed it? And for the big data centers, that is now a public data set. And one of the ways that you can change your consumption is to move the consumption. For example, if you can do your post-production in California during the day in California, that's using solar. So you're using more electricity, but you're not burning more oil. And there are tools becoming available that allow you to move that around. So that's my first point. But the second point is, you might have seen some interesting photographs of the Falcon Heavy rocket engine online. And there's the version 1 picture, which looks like somebody's crashed a car into a big cone. There's pipes everywhere. There's the version 2 engine that looks slimmer and sleeker, and the version 3A engine, which is what's on the Falcon Super Heavy, looks beautiful, like an engineering marvel made out of polished metal, and it's slim and it's sleek. Our media software is not quite as good as version 1 of that engine at the moment. The software is a mess. We haven't figured out what best practice is. We're trying to do good stuff, but we've not really thought through the end-to-end process. And if we can measure how bad we're being, we will get better. And if we can't measure it, we're
le F-word, comme on dit en anglais. Merci Bruce pour cette jolie poétique conclusion. Donc ce que tu nous dis en gros, c'est que y a une évolution naturelle, et là tu faisais référence à l'aérospatial où on voit vraiment de vastes amélioration du hardware, du matériel, et tu penses qu'on en est encore qu'au balbutiement justement de ces plateformes dont on parlait, que ça va, on espère, s'améliorer si on travaille ensemble et si on est plus malin. Et ton deuxième point, qui était le premier point et qui me semble aussi intéressant, c'est que tu nous dis, mais les gars, il y a une histoire de consommation, mais il y a aussi une histoire de où tu consommes ton électricité, en faisant référence au fait que si tu consommes de l'électricité solaire dans un pays où il fait beau, chaud et il y a du soleil, peut-être que c'est pas mal. Hein? Alors en parlant de pays beaux et chauds, merci de vous être déplacés au SATIS aujourd'hui. Il y a un magnifique temps gris à l'extérieur. Je voudrais remercier les équipes techniques, toutes les équipes du SATIS de l'organisation, Nathalie, Stéphane, Hortense qui nous sauvent la vie quotidiennement, et vous qui nous suivez online, et à bientôt pour une prochaine édition. Et rappelez-vous, il y a une autre séance à 15h aujourd'hui, vous la retrouverez en ligne également, et on parlera de 4K UHD HDR en 2110 avec des gens qui l'ont vraiment fait. Il y en a un ici. Et ils nous feront de beaux retours d'expérience. Merci à vous, messieurs.